Hi guys, and welcome to That's Mental. So today I want to talk about the topic of burnout, but more specifically I want to talk about what is burnout trying to tell you. What happens when you burn out and why does it happen, and what is your body and your mind trying to tell you. So in previous videos I've talked about my experiences with burnout. I'll put those in the description box below. I've shared a couple of different experiences I've had and how I got there, and I talked about the different circumstances that led to that. But I've been thinking a lot and also speaking with other people about their experiences, and it led me to get to this question: what is burnout actually trying to tell you? And I don't think that we talk about it that much. A lot of the times we see articles saying that burnout is on the rise. Burnout is bad for you, the consequences of burnout, the cost of burnout to employers and to society. And that's great. It's great that we're talking more about it. Articles also often talk about how you can prevent burnout, be it as an individual or as a company, putting tactics in place to manage that. So, like I said, all of these things are great, but it's not really talking about the signal that a burnout is trying to send you. And I thought about this because recently two people shared their experiences with me. One person reached out to tell me that after going through a lot of personal, let's say, trauma and negative experiences, this person then threw themselves into that job, started working a lot, and then eventually burned out because it was too much. And then whilst I was traveling, I met another person, and this person told me that they had been overdoing it for years and working different jobs, different shifts, like just non-stop, and then suddenly had such a severe burnout that they actually lost the ability to speak, lost the ability to move practically. I think this person told me they were bedridden, and definitely ended up suffering a speech impediment. So it was crazy, like extreme burnout. I've actually never even heard of this before. And those two experiences made me think, well, yeah, I mean, it's a sign. Like in each case, it's a sign. So, for example, burnout is different for everyone. We've all experienced it in different ways. So, like I said, these two people, one of them had a very extreme case, and the other person rather suffered from, I think, a buildup of personal issues and then really maybe neglecting their own mental health. And then from my side, it was definitely being completely overworked, and just maybe feeling in conflict with myself and my values, like I shared in my last video. And the symptoms that I experienced were things like, being irritable all the time, being on edge, wanting to cry or easily bursting into tears. And then the spiral, it could be also the sleep deprivation, and then not looking after your physical health, your diet, and then all of that kind of culminates into a bad mental health situation, where I personally reached a point where I kind of broke down and couldn't really deal with it anymore, and just didn't have the strength to keep going. So in every case, I think that our body and our mind is telling us, okay, this is it, like this is our breaking point. Actually, I listened to a Sanctus podcast, which I'll also put in the description box, and in that podcast, two people described similar experiences where they had just kept going. Sometimes they didn't even realize that they were burning themselves out until one day their bodies just said stop. So I think that the key thing to recognize here is that our bodies and our minds, in two different ways, are telling us enough is enough, we need to take a break now. From a physical perspective, I think the symptoms of burnout, or things that you might notice, in the very extreme case, like this person I met, your body might just shut down completely, and you might just have to rest, not be able to get out of bed. You might, suffer this speech impediment, which again is really extreme, but let's say in a less extreme case, maybe you're just suddenly exhausted. Let's say you just can no longer find the strength to do your daily activities. You're still functioning, you can get out of bed, but everything seems like incredibly difficult to overcome. So it could be that. It could also be that you get more and more tense, that you start suffering from, let's say, maybe back problems, or that you experience other physical pain. It could also be stomach pain. I know that personally, for me, it tends to manifest as tension. And in the past, while I didn't always recognize that as being linked to my mental state, now I can really tell that when I'm getting stressed or something's on my mind, I feel it in my body immediately. I think it's really important for us to recognize that our bodies are telling us, we feel that something's not quite right in your mind. We feel that, there's something upsetting you. There's a discomfort. You're reaching like a breaking point, and your body is giving you these symptoms. And often, we tend to ignore them. I think particularly when you're in the state of near burnout, you're not looking after yourself anymore. And just in general, we're used to pushing ourselves, so we tend to ignore those symptoms. But our body is trying to tell us already then, to alert us that something is wrong. It could also be that you get sick, for example, either sick more easily or sick more often. And again, maybe your immune system is weakened, or your body is just trying to tell you something, and it's telling you to slow down. Because often when you're sick, you do have to take a few days off, you have to stop working. Once again, we try to power through that. I'm guilty of it. We do it all the time. We keep going to work. We don't know how to stop, but our body's telling us it wants us to slow down and take care of it. So there's all of these signs that our body is trying to send us. And then when it comes to the actual burnout, which I guess is more like the mental breakdown, that's our mind finally saying, okay, I'm saturated, I've reached breaking point, I can't do it anymore, like I can't process these emotions, I can't process this information, and I'm just shutting down. I think it's really interesting to think about it like that and think, okay, your mind has also been overextended. And I think that often we think about our physical health, and we're taught about it a lot more, and we're a lot more conscious of that, like not overexerting ourselves. For example, in sport, if you practice sports, they always tell you like 1 day on, 1 day off. Even in sports training, you can have like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off ways of training. So we're taught a lot about recovery for our bodies. And there are also a lot of therapy aimed at helping your body, right? So like physio, massage, acupuncture, all of these things. When it comes to our mind, we don't think about oversaturating our mind, or maybe we're starting to do so. But yeah, I think the consequences of being in an always-on world, so that means like, okay, constantly being attacked by notifications, whether it's emails, whether it's messages, whether it's the social media notifications that you get, whether it's, I don't know, even weather alarm notifications, push notifications, all of this on smartphones, of course, or smart watches. You cannot get away from it really. And then if you think about it, not only are all these notifications, but we're kind of juggling. We're juggling our work life, which is, let's say, 8 hours of the day when we're in the office, having to respond to work requests, having to deal with incoming requests. It could even be longer than 8 hours, depending on your job. And then after that, you also have to deal with maybe appointments you need to make, friends that you want to see, trips that you want to organize. And while all of this is, let's say, normal, it is part of daily life, and part of that are things you want to enjoy. It does mean that our minds are constantly overstimulated. And with that, like the more that we put on our minds, the more we make them work, and the more that they're spinning, I think the more difficult it becomes to process emotions and to really be in touch with what you're experiencing and to listen to those thoughts. And particularly, I think that when you're busy, always going on to the next thing, it's really easy to start to ignore the thoughts and the warning signs that your brain is sending you. And that's where it comes back to burnout, because I think often burnout doesn't happen overnight. Usually it's a real build up over a certain amount of time. And I think that if we listened to our minds, if we allowed those thoughts to come, if we confronted them, which of course is really scary, then we would get the signals much earlier on. And if we weren't so busy and overstimulated, those signals would enter our mind and we'd be able to realize, oh my God, I'm overstimulating. So yeah, I think in that sense, the burnout is also a point where our mind is telling us, I really need this space to think, to process, to feel, to grieve, to hurt. And that's why you have the breakdown, both physical and mental, because actually you just need rest. You need a lot of rest. And I think that for anyone who has experienced a burnout before and overcome it, of course, each experience is different. But for me, I know that when I'm able to finally slow down and take time off and clear my mind and give my health the headspace, that's when I started to feel better. So yeah, for example, in my previous job when I was really working a lot, annually I would take this 2-week holiday, one at Christmas and one at another point in the year. And during those 2 weeks, I'd finally be able to disconnect from my daily life, from work, and that's when the fog would start to clear in my brain, and I'd start to be able to, it might even be think about new ways of coping with things. It might even be coming up with new ideas. It might be my creativity coming back, whatever it may be. But suddenly my mind was more free, my body was more rested, and then I felt more able to deal with the shit that life was throwing at me on a daily basis. And to come back to the people that I mentioned in the beginning, the person who contacted me to tell me that they had burned out after going through some personal trauma and then throwing themselves into work, that really struck me as the mind saying, enough. We've not, in that particular case, I think this person had gone through something in their personal lives, so it wasn't necessarily the work. And often we talk as burnout being related to work, but I believe that, of course, our personal and work lives are very closely linked, and sometimes it happens the other way around. And it really occurred to me that in that person's case, they perhaps hadn't given themselves the time to process the emotions that trauma had caused for them. So it could be, allowing yourself to feel grief, allowing yourself to feel upset and sad and maybe even afraid, and confront all of those thoughts. And of course, when you undergo something trauma or something personal, it probably also causes a lot of self-doubt. It affects your self-confidence, and you do need time to sit with those thoughts, to reflect on them, to work through them, maybe get help to do that. And it's uncomfortable and it's scary, but I think that ultimately if you push those thoughts to the back and you don't deal with them, then that's when the burnout happens. So that's really what I wanted to talk about today. I don't think it really requires going more in depth than that. I just think it's really important not just to think about, okay, the consequences of burnout or why it happens or how to prevent it, but really also think, if you have experienced a burnout, what happened in your life at that point that caused it? And what was your mind and your body trying to tell you? Have you ever thought about that? You probably thought about getting better. You probably thought about what can you do differently next time? How can you avoid this from happening again? And those are all great things to think about. It's great to be more in touch, more aware, and know how to manage your mental health. But really think about, okay, what's the bigger picture? What message was my mind and body trying to tell me? And what's going to be your key takeaway from that? So there you go. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know what you think. please share in the comments below, or you can get in touch via my website. You can always leave a comment on the blog post, or you can contact me. So please share your thoughts with me. I'm really curious to hear, and I look forward to seeing you next time.